Clint Eastwood banned one person from his own funeral. Not out of anger, not to generate headlines, but as a clear and deliberate line drawn by a man who spent 95 years deciding exactly what he would and wouldn't tolerate. That person is Spike Lee, and the story behind that decision cuts through decades of film history, public confrontation, and a deeply personal argument about how Hollywood chooses to tell the truth. Before that story lands with the weight it deserves, though, you have to go back to where it all started, to a big baby born in San Francisco and a life that never once went where anyone expected. Born on May 31st, 1930 at St. Francis Memorial Hospital in San Francisco, Clint Eastwood Jr. arrived weighing over 11 pounds, big enough that nurses nicknamed him Samson before his parents had settled on anything else. His father, Clinton, worked as a manufacturing executive at Georgia Pacific. His mother, Ruth, later took a clerical job at IBM, and the family relocated 3 separate times during his childhood before finally landing in Piedmont, California. There they lived in an affluent neighborhood complete with a swimming pool and country club memberships, each parent driving their own car, which looked like stability from the outside but never translated into academic direction for Clint. School frustrated him consistently. He was held back, sent to summer school more than once, and eventually asked to leave Piedmont High after burning an effigy on the school lawn and leaving an obscene message on the athletic scoreboard. He transferred to Oakland Technical High School and graduated in 1949 without ceremony, closing that chapter as quietly as he had stumbled through it. After graduation, the jobs came and went without much ambition attached. Lifeguard, paper carrier, grocery clerk, golf caddy, forest firefighter. Then in 1951, the United States Army drafted him during the Korean War, and that's when the most dramatic moment of his early life unfolded. Returning from Seattle as a passenger on a Douglas ad bomber, the aircraft ran completely out of fuel and crashed into the ocean near Point Reyes. Eastwood and the pilot survived by inflating a life raft and swimming 2 miles to shore, the kind of near-death experience that quietly reshapes a person's understanding of how much time they actually have. He was discharged in 1953, alive and intact, and moved to Hollywood that same year. A screen test with Universal Studios earned him a 40-week contract, which led to bit parts in productions like Tarantula and Revenge of the Creature, before the studio dropped him without much ceremony. Minor television appearances followed, another working actor trying to stay visible. That changed in 1959 when he landed the role of Rowdy Yates on the Western television series Rawhide, a show that ran for years and made American audiences pay real attention to the tall, quiet, steady presence on their screens. But the legend didn't fully form on American soil. Director Sergio Leone brought him to Italy in the mid-1960s to appear in a trilogy of spaghetti westerns later known as the Dollars Trilogy, A Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Eastwood played the man with no name, a gunfighter whose stillness carried more menace than any outburst could. When those films reached American theaters in 1967, the reaction landed like a detonation, and he wasn't just an actor anymore. Back in the United States, with control on his mind, he formed his own production company, Malpaso, a quiet declaration that he would shape his own path going forward. Working closely with director Don Siegel, he appeared in Coogan's Bluff and Two Mules for Sister Sarah before their collaboration produced the film that carved his name deepest into American cinema. Dirty Harry in 1971 gave audiences Inspector Harry Callahan, a San Francisco detective who carried a .44 Magnum and a moral code that refused to bend regardless of consequence. 4 sequels followed, and lines from the screenplay entered everyday language across the country. During those same years, he began studying the camera from the other side, making his directorial debut with Play Misty for Me, then moving into High Plains Drifter and the outlaw Josie Wales, where the mythology of the American West started showing its cracks and his characters carried grief alongside their weapons. The 1980s balanced action work with quieter projects, but 1992 delivered what many still call his masterpiece. Unforgiven stripped the romance from the Western genre entirely and replaced it with consequence, placing Eastwood as an aging outlaw pulled back into violence he had spent years trying to leave behind, a man confronting who he used to be rather than celebrating it. The Academy Awards responded with Best Picture and Best Director wins, and critics who had dismissed him for decades began writing differently. Mystic River deepened that reputation. Then, Million Dollar Baby in 2004, where he played a boxing trainer hollowed out by regret, earned another Best Picture win and another Best Director Oscar. By then, the image of the tough screen loner had evolved into something far more textured, a filmmaker willing to sit inside loss and moral failure without reaching for an easy exit. Two World War II films arrived in 2006, Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima, both telling the Battle of Iwo Jima from opposite sides of the conflict. Letters earned 4 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture and Best Director, and was widely regarded as the stronger film. But Flags of Our Fathers pulled criticism from director Spike Lee, who argued publicly that the film had erased Black Marines from a battle where they were undeniably present. Lee made those comments at the Cannes Film Festival in 2009 while promoting his own World War II project, Miracle at St. Anna, which centered entirely on African American soldiers. His argument reached beyond the single film. Hollywood had long ignored the contributions of over 1 million Black men and women who served during the war, and Flags of Our Fathers, in his view, was one more entry in that pattern. Eastwood's response came through a Guardian interview, and it was direct. Flags of Our Fathers was built specifically around Joe Rosenthal's famous photograph and the 6 men who raised the American flag at Mount Suribachi, and those 6 men were white. Inserting a black actor into the flag-raising sequence, he argued, would have undermined historical accuracy rather than honored anyone. He also referenced Lee's earlier criticism of Bird, his 1988 biographical film about jazz musician Charlie Parker, and told Lee plainly to shut his face. Lee responded without hesitation, calling the remark something an angry old man would say, acknowledging Eastwood as a skilled director while insisting they made different films from fundamentally different perspectives. The exchange turned into something larger than either film. It became a public argument about representation, about who controls the historical frame in cinema, and about what it means to leave certain people out of the story entirely. Flags of Our Fathers did contain brief shots of Black soldiers, including a wounded Marine being carried from the battlefield, but those glimpses did nothing to address Lee's central complaint. Steven Spielberg, who had produced both war films and maintained a relationship with Lee, reportedly stepped in to quiet things down. The public hostilities faded. Lee eventually sent Eastwood a future project for a private screening, which suggested the temperature had dropped even if the underlying disagreement never fully resolved. Now, nearly 2 decades later, with Eastwood having crossed into his mid-90s and speaking candidly about mortality following the death of his longtime partner, Christina Sandera, in July 2024, that feud sits as the reported foundation for his stated wish. Spike Lee does not belong at his funeral. The personal side of his life ran louder and messier than any film poster ever suggested. He met Maggie Johnson in May 1953 when a mutual friend arranged a blind date despite the fact that Maggie already had a boyfriend. She later recalled coming down the stairs of her sorority house and the moment landing hard when he turned around. They married on December 19, 1953, and he later admitted he had proposed with real hesitation. Their first year together he described as terrible. An affair with stunt woman Roxanne Tunis, whom he met on the set of Rawhide, produced a daughter named Kimber in 1964, and Eastwood later claimed he had no knowledge of the pregnancy and only learned of the child a full year after her birth. Sandra Locke arrived in 1975, and that relationship eventually collapsed into prolonged legal warfare. She filed a palimony lawsuit, then 5 years after the first settlement filed a fraud suit, and alleged throughout that she had undergone abortions and a tubal ligation because Eastwood had told her he wanted no more children. Locke died in 2018. Overlapping that entire period, flight attendant Jaslyn Reeves gave birth to his son Scott Eastwood in 1986 and his daughter Catherine in 1988. Actress Frances Fisher gave birth to their daughter Francesca in August 1993 after meeting during production of Pink Cadillac, and the relationship dissolved before year's end. Dina Ruiz, a news anchor who had interviewed him in 1992, became his second wife in March 1996, following a wedding organized in just 48 hours at a friend's estate. Their daughter Morgan arrived in December 1996. By 2012, the marriage was fracturing during the filming of the reality show Mrs. Eastwood and Company, a project that reportedly infuriated him. Christina Sandera followed, walking the red carpet at the Academy Awards beside him in 2015 and standing with his family, his children, his granddaughter, and even Maggie Johnson at the premiere of The Mule in 2018. Her death in July 2024 closed that chapter without warning. 8 children with 6 different women, 2 marriages, legal battles stretching across decades, and through all of it, he remained the man who built Malpaso, directed on his own instinct, and refused to let the industry tell him who he was. Even in his 90s, he kept working, with Juror Number 2 arriving in 2024 as a courtroom drama built around guilt and moral reckoning, themes that had followed his work for 40 years. The Irving G. Thalberg Memorial Award, the American Film Institute Life Achievement Award, 4 Oscars, recognition from France's Legion of Honor. A career that began in television bit parts and never fully stopped moving. At 95, the noise has gone quiet. What stays is the line he has drawn around his own final scene, one name excluded from the room, and the decades of film, conflict, grief, and stubborn endurance that explain exactly why.